Okay, so now let's go in with what we would call local color. And at this point, now I can paint. Whew, right, finally. Like, okay, I did all those steps, which seems like it slows us down. You know, we're just chomping at the bits to start painting and get the paint down. But I tell you, slowing down, thinking about it, really, we sort of can solve a lot of problems that might arise. So what I'm doing here, I don't know if it's visible, but I'm just, within that dark shape, I'm just trying to put down all the other darks I see within that dark value. I tend to paint very impressionistically, and I find this method helps me to keep a more solid shape. The color I'm choosing, you know, it's warm light, cool shadow. That's a very common thing, no matter how hot the landscape is, how hot the colors are, there's going to be a sense of cooler notes in the shadow. The sky is reflecting into them. We're getting notes of the sky color in the shadow areas, so it tends to cool it off. So, and someone yesterday mentioned that, you know, being out in this part of the country, when you stand in shade, you can really feel the temperature difference. And so I try to convey that by going cooler, like slightly exaggerating my cools in the shadows. Okay, let me just keep playing with that. I'm so excited now. This is good stuff, right? We finally get to put some color now. Now I'm just suggesting color. I don't want to over-describe. I don't want to tell the viewer too much, because they bring their own story. Okay, so now I've changed the value from that dark contrast slightly. See the value change? Mm-hmm. So now I've laid a lot of kind of cool violets and cool colors. Now I'm adding a bit of the warm earth in there. And what I want to do is keep it more in this area, because as we go back in space, there's more of the atmosphere that gets into the color. So they tend to be cooler here than they would be here. So it's just a slight little temperature change. This is very common of how I paint. I mean, most of these were done in that same method, whether it's oil or pastel. Sort of block it in, start to finesse the darks. Okay, now I get to use another value. That's exciting. I know we've been dying now. I know you're all going to love it when you get to use a third value. Now I'm going a little lighter here because it's going to be a little cooler. So the same thing, it goes from warm to cool, and here it's going to go from a slightly warmer tone to a cooler tone. Now I'm using this is a Mars violet. I use this a lot in my paintings. It's just that beautiful, it's made by Rembrandt, and they're extremely useful for desert scenes. Violet is one of those colors that just nature has a lot of violet out there. I mean, grade violet's not that real pretty foo-foo violet. It's more grade, it's more earthy. One guy that really used a lot of violet in his work, and he painted sunlight paintings, is Joaquin Sorolla. And he was a Spaniard, and he painted on the Valencia coast a lot. But he's this brilliant painter of sunlight. And if you get to study his works up close, you see he has a lot of violets in the transitions of the painting. Well, he lived like around the turn of the century, just right after the Impressionist. For him, his painting god was Velázquez. Well, then when the Impressionists came along, violet was this color now that was being manufactured. And Sorolla said, violet and Velázquez are God. I stress that because that's how valuable he thought that color was in painting. So much of pastel is, it's really an impressionistic medium. The beauty of pastel is when we can let those colors intermingle with themselves without diluting them too much. You've heard of the bloom of the pastel? That's that physical dusty quality that is in the pastels. And as soon as we dilute it, it just takes that sort of crystallization away. So if we just sort of layer it, just paint with pastel over pastel, we retain that beautiful bloom. Whistler called it the dust on butterflies' wings. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so I'm adding a little blue, a little green to the sky. I'm leaving all the colors there so we can see. So what I'm doing at this point is I'm just lightly dusting the surface. I want to start to suggest these values, but not state them too directly. So one of the ways in pastel we can get two values is to go in with something darker and then go over it with something lighter. What I'm doing at this point is I'm just looking at subtle little value shifts and indicating them. This is the point where we really want to pay attention to what the value is as we get a plane change. So this is an upright plane. It's going to be darker than this plane, which is flat. This is a slanted plane, so that's going to be darker than this plane here. So essentially I'm dealing with ground plane, upright, ground plane, slanted plane, sky. So there should be a variety of different values. And so my job at this point is to test the values. So as I do that, I'm testing the color. That value and that are too close, so that's wrong. Sometimes we just have to test it. It feels like it's more like it. I may have to cool that down or darken. I have to cool that down and lighten it or darken the value, the slanted plane above it. No, I don't want the color to be isolated, so I'm just going to hint at the color in the slanted plane. Are there any questions while I'm working away? The nature of this side of the pastel, you tend to get squarish marks. It's very similar to using a flat brush. So I think of my mark making as, in a way, very similar to the mark making of the brush. It's a flat brush. Now, occasionally, if I want more of a rounded feel, then I might use the end. Let me see if I can show you the difference. There's a flat one. Here's the end. See the two? So one's like a flat brush and the other one's like a round. So probably at this stage, a combination of two. And I'm also trying to put them down in an impressionistic way so I'm not, too techniquey. I'm going in with this cooler green just to soften that yellow down a bit, push it back. Remember, the warm colors come forward, cool colors recede. So in the landscape, the further back we are, the more we'll see those colors getting cool. It goes from dark to light value-wise, and it goes from warm to cool, temperature-wise. So I'm adding a bit of this really dark green in here. So I'm averaging that shape there. Try and just average it, not thinking about individual grasses at all, but just the overall tone. You know, how can I suggest something with the least amount of means possible? And if I can do that, then it's going to simplify the process. So each mark I'm making, I'm trying to describe the vegetation, the value, the color, but I'm also trying to simplify it down into a shape that says I'm grass or brush without describing. Now I'm gonna shift to a stiff brush here, and I use this a lot in my pastels. This sort of helps me get that brushy quality for vegetation. And wherever I'm using the brush, I want to think of the plane of the object, the shape. So there's here the plane does that angle. Up here, it's upright. This is flat. These are upright. This is more of an angled plane. This is upright. So you just kind of dissect the planes and then let your marks follow the plane. Yeah, I might be careful with that. That's a good point. Yeah, I would muddy it up. It might be good to kind of, I can't really clean the brush, but just dust it off. This is a Robert Simmons filbert brush. I mean, this started as a flat, and this paper will definitely eat up the brush. So, you might want to just use old used brushes.